Hello, Girlsplainers! Welcome back to Girlsplaining Gaming. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to tell you about my favorite commander deck, Sakashima of the Thousand Faces and Kodama of the East Tree, and how I came to be playing this deck. So I was visiting another state for about a month, and I was getting kind of bored, feeling cooped up, and so I thought, okay, what better to do than to go play Magic at the local game store. And I went in, I know that I know how to play Commander well enough to just ask somebody if I can play their deck, read it for a couple minutes, and then play successfully. I might not win, but I know that I can, successfully do that. But as many of you may know, this is kind of scary, especially as a young woman going in alone in a place where you don't know anybody, you don't know the vibe, you don't know what it's like. This is a little intimidating, but I was so bored, and I decided I'm just going to do it anyway. So I went in and I talked to this guy at the counter, and he said, sure, these people are nice. They're going to be happy to let you borrow a deck. So I go up to this table, and this older gentleman, is showing me his collection and offering me things, and I'm just like, I'm nervous all around. I'm getting a weird vibe. And then somebody else calls out to me and is like, hey, or if you want to play this kind of thing, we have stuff over here. And I look at this table, and it's like I knew. I walked over to them and I was like, okay, thank you. And they were kind of giving me the impression that I had just saved myself from trouble. They were a beacon of hope for me, honestly. And I settled in at this table of 3 other guys, and they were the nicest and the coolest. And if you're watching this, somehow, thank you so much for letting me sit with you and play. So I looked through their decks, and I saw this one that I thought could make sense to me. It was Simic at the time. I don't even think that I knew what that meant. That means blue-green. And it looked like a concept that I could understand, because I was going for, okay, cool interactions, whatever. I just want to be able to play this deck that I've never seen before. And it was Kodama of the East Tree, which is 4 colorless and 2 forest. It's a 6/6 spirit with reach. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. It also has partner, which means you can have 2 commanders if both of them have partner. Now the other one is Sakashima of the Thousand Faces. This is a 3 colorless and 1 island. It is a human rogue. It's a 3/1. It says you may have Sakashima of a Thousand Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has Sakashima of a Thousand Faces' other abilities. The legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control, which means you can validly copy pretty much anything with this. So I play, and usually when I play Magic in a public scenario, I'm not really expecting to win. I can play really functionally, and I might win maybe 1 out of 5 or 6 times. I went 4 for 4. I played 2 games one week and 2 games the next week with different decks. I played 3 games with this deck and 1 game with a black-white deck from one of the other players. And I won every single time. And it was crazy. This is not something that was normal to me, but it really boosted my confidence. And honestly, even more than the winning, just being able to go and make friends. We had this joke. I kept doing this thing where I would play something, and then I'd say a fact about myself or something that was a little shocking, and I'd be like, lore drop. And they picked up on it. It was so fun. And I found out after the fact that this deck that I played was worth $10,000. I would never have touched it, personally, if I had known that it was worth $10,000. A couple hundred, sure. 1,000, maybe. $10,000? There were a lot of dual lands and a lot of... It was a lot of lands in there. So I do not have the $10,000 version. So then I went through and looked at all of the things that were really, really expensive, which was most of them. I started with a budget for this about $75 because I didn't have that much of a job at the time. And then I decided that I wasn't going to get anywhere with that, so I set my budget for this at about $200, which was pretty doable because I had a lot of the cards already, and I was also able to trade for some, and then I probably spent $175 on it, including things like the sleeves and whatnot. So I went through and looked at all of the really expensive cards and thought about what is actually the purpose of this in the deck. Sure, it has a couple different abilities. Which one is the one that means something in context? And then I went and looked on Scryfall, and I used really advanced search terms and kind of narrowed things down to find cards that would be less expensive that did kind of the same thing. The reason that I think this deck is so much fun is it's basically play big creature, play thing for free, copy big creature, widen the board, win. And it's even more fun with multiple players. And I'll walk you through some of the other strategies that come up in here and some of the cool cards that I have. One of them that is just kind of crazy and I can't believe is an actual card that's allowed is Omniscience. It's 10 converted mana cost, and it's an enchantment. You may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. What? Okay, oh my god. And a lot of the things in this deck allow you to get a lot of mana or double the amount or play things for free. And then once you put this down, it's only a matter of time before things explode and you just end up winning. So how do you get there? Well, one of the ways is Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. This is a creature, but it has an ability that's really important, which is tap one forest and then tap this card. Add X mana and any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So it essentially doubles your mana. And, really importantly, in any combination of colors. So you don't have to worry about filtering it, about using the same color, it's easy. Other things that are play things for free, one of the additions that I made to this was Hawken's Insight, and it starts out as Jacob Hawken Inspector. This is a creature that then transforms into an enchantment, and basically you exile things with it, and then you once per turn, once it is transformed, you can play things that are under it from exile for free. This is huge. A couple games ago, I had Omniscience in there as the first thing that I exiled with it, and then I played Omniscience for free, like wicked early, and it was great. Other things in here, I often find this kind of linear way of searching for specific creatures so that I can get the things that I want out. And there's a couple cards in here that let you search for things that are kind of smaller. You can maybe sacrifice something and search for, 2 plus X, where X is that creature's mana cost. Or something like Woodland Bellower. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a non-legendary green creature card with CMC 3 or less. That's not super helpful when you're trying to search for something really big. However, there's other cards in here that let you search for something that have mana cost 6 or greater, and it doesn't have any restrictions on it other than that. So what I usually search for, if it's in the beginning of the game, I always go for Nezahal Primal Tide. This is a 7 mana Elder Dinosaur. It's a 7/7. It can't be countered, you have no maximum hand size, and you draw a card whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell. This is huge. This is really good for early game. I say early game, as if you can play a 7 mana creature in the early game, but maybe you can, and that's good for you. It also has a kind of blink ability where you can discard 3 cards to exile it, and then it comes back at the beginning of the next end step. Not your next end step, but the next end step. So it will be able to come back and untap on your next turn, which is super helpful, and I've saved it in many a situation. This is really good to just get a big creature out on the board. It's also really good for drawing cards, which the rest of this deck, I didn't really build a whole lot of card draw on there, so I love searching for this one. If I have the opportunity to search for another thing, and I'm getting kind of threatened on the board, I might search for Hullbreaker Horror. This is conveniently another 7 mana, so if I have Kodama out and I play this one, I can also play this one if I have it in my hand. So convenient. This is a Kraken. It's a 7/8. It has flash, so you can play it whenever an instant might be played, and it also can't be countered. This has whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So you can bounce anything that you want whenever you cast any kind of spell. Now in this deck, you do have to pay attention to cast versus put on the battlefield or play from your hand, because there's a lot of not casting that's going on. However, Kodama's ability is really good because you don't have to cast it. That certainly triggers it, but it's also triggered whenever another permanent just enters the battlefield under your control from an ability that wasn't this. So let's say I've used Hawkins' Insight to play something for free. I get to play something extra for free off of Kodama, and that I think is brilliant. Lastly is the cincher. This is the closer. This is what wins you the game a lot of the time. I love Craterhoof Behemoth. This is the most expensive card in the deck. I got it on eBay for less than market value, so thanks eBay. This is a 8 mana 5/5. It's a beast. It has haste. Whenever Craterhoof Behemoth enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So what you do is you play this, and you get a huge number of counters on all of your creatures. And then you attack with all of them, and they have trample, so it does a lot. Make this better, and I did this when I was playing this for the first time, with Azuri's Predation already on the board, which says, for each creature your opponents control, create a 4/4 green Phyrexian beast creature token. Each of those tokens fights a different one of those creatures. So you're creating a creature for every creature that's on the board, and they're fighting. And these are 4/4s, so they might win. A lot of them will win. And then you've widened your board incredibly. And then you have like a +19/+19 on all of the things with trample. You win the game. Lastly, is a bribery. This is a sorcery. This is fun. It's a 5 mana. Search target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player shuffles. Often when I'm playing with somebody that has a deck that I don't know that well, I'll just ask them to kindly please tell me what the best creature for me to take is. And one time, somebody had a Craterhoof Behemoth. So I played 2 Craterhoof Behemoths at once, which I was doing like 1 to 200 damage. That was a lot. I also forgot to mention the usefulness of Sakashima, because you can have them copy any of the stuff. So, several uses for this is you could copy one of your big creatures. You could copy, say, Hullbreaker Horror and then have it bounce 2 things every time you cast a spell. Or you could use it to attack with things. You can also have it copy the mana-giving abilities. So you could have it copy Selvala Heart of the Wilds, and then you get 2 extra mana for every mana that you play. I think this will be my favorite for a long time, and I keep working on it. I keep like fiddling with things and putting them in, but the basis of it is really good, and it obviously it's not the $10,000 version, but thank you for that. Very sincerely, that whole experience is the reason that I found that I loved being more competitive. Because I was just playing Magic to kind of fiddle around and play Magic, which is fun and great. And that's the day that I realized that deck building was fun and important. It just, sparked this thing where I know that I can play to win, and I know I'm good enough, and I just have to figure out the way that I can best do that. So, thank you very much to my friends who let me play their decks and showed me this wonderful, wonderful world of slightly more competitive Magic. Lore drop. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about this deck, if you want the deck list, if you want to build it, if you have any suggestions for me. I'm open. See you next time.